Hey soul fairies, and welcome to class. So in today's tutorial we'll be looking at how to make plus size pants for females. So I'm working with a measurement of 45 hip. So everything that I'm doing here applies to a 45 to 50 hip. So these are the measurements we'll be needing for this. Do well to measure yourself, not so firmly, because we want to have room in our pants. And we'll be doing a lot of tightening for this trouser. We'll be doing our center back and center front tightening, and we'll be doing our center back raising and so on. Just stick with me, guys, and I will show you how and when to use all these measurements. So like I said, these measurements apply to hip 45 to 50. I'll be sharing with us a table, a pattern drafting table, that will guide us in knowing exactly what to do and when to use it. So here is what a basic pants look like. So essentially you can use this and turn it into any style line that you so desire. You can turn this into flared pants, you can make it pencil, you can even add your waistband to it and go ahead and add your darts and so on and so forth. So I'll be teaching us basic trouser pattern, but do feel free to go ahead and use this. So this is the table that will be guiding you, so do well to identify your hip measurement and use it. So let's get over to the drafting table. So I have some lines already drawn out. I'm going to be showing you exactly what and how I derived this. So I marked 5 inches away from the edge because we'll be needing this essentially to draft our back, and I marked or you can even make it 5 inches from the top. It doesn't really matter. You may not end up using it. So I'll be taking all my measurements from this top line, so that will serve as my waistline. So walk with me, guys, and you will get this right. So the first measurements I'm going to be getting is my crotch depth. My crotch depth is my hip measurement. That's 45 divided by 4, and that's exactly what I'll be using as my crotch depth. So dividing that by 4, I got 11 1/4, and that's what I'm marking across board. So this is the first line you will introduce to this pattern. Then the next line we'll be introducing is our hip measurement, and for me is 2.5 inches away from my crotch depth. So I'm going to be measuring 2.5 inches. Please refer to the table that I shared earlier and use the one that applies to your hip measurement. So this is my hip line, and the line below it is my crotch line. So I'm labeling it so that you don't get confused along the way. So from that crotch line, I'll be measuring the entire length of my trouser, and then I'm going to be dividing it by 2. I'm just trying to determine where my knee will be, and after I divide this by 2, I'm just going to mark it here as well, and from that point I'm going to go up 1.5 inches. So I'm just quickly cleaning that so that it doesn't really confuse you. So I measured exactly what I had there, and then I measured it all the way down. Remember, I did divide the crotch line to the length. I divided it by 2, and I went up by 1.5, and it became my knee line. So obviously this place will now be my waistline. So now that we've gotten the vertical measurement sorted, we're going to go over to the horizontal measurements. And the first measurement that I'm going to be applying here is my hip measurement. So I'm going to divide my hip by 4. And because our front hip is usually smaller than our back hip, I'll be minusing 1 inch from my hip measurement. So depending on what your hip measurement is, I'm going to share with you a list so that it will guide you in knowing exactly what to remove. So at this point, please pay attention to what I just shared on your screen so that you can be able to walk according to your hip measurement. So for my hip, I'm going to be removing 1 inch from the measurement. So my hip divided by 4 minus 1, and that is exactly what I'm marking all the way up. If you've not watched our pattern drafting, sketch pattern drafting, please do well to watch it. I went in depth sharing what and why we do this. So for the crotch extension, I'm going to be dividing my front hip by 4. So essentially I measured that and I divided it by 4. So whatever figure I get, and I got 2.5 inches. So I'm going to be measuring it from this point here to that. So this is what I have now. I have 2.5 inches. So for us to know where to touch the curve on that line, we're going to be dividing that entire line by 4. So I'm going to be measuring all the way up, and this is where it meets it. So I'll be connecting it using a curve to that line. So for the center front tightening, remember I did say that we'll be doing a lot of tightening. So for the center front fitting, we're going to be using 1.5 inches. Remember that this applies to a hip of 45 to 50. So you may want to check the table to know exactly what applies to you. So I'm going to be going in by 1.5 inches, and that's that point right here. Then from that point, I'll be going down by 2 inches. This will be my center front lowering. So essentially this is to give the waistline a bit of curve so that it fits better on me. So according to the table I shared, please find out how many inches you need to lower your waistline. So from that point, I just connected it all the way to that edge right there, and I'm drawing in my curve using my curved ruler, and with a straight line or a bit of curve, I'm going to be connecting it like so. So we're making progress with the front pattern. So for the waistline, we'll be doing our waist measurement divided by 4. So whatever your waist measurement is, you divide this by 4, and we're going to be placing it on this line like so, from that 1.5 inches that we went in, and this is exactly where my hip my waist measurement stopped. So I'm going to be reconnecting it to my waistline. I'm not going to be using any dart for this front because the reduction that we did to the hip essentially removes every baggage that will be in front. So from that point, I'm going to be connecting it all the way to my hip line. So let me just clean this out so that it doesn't confuse you. So this is how far we've gone. So we're going to proceed to the crotch line. So on the crotch line, we're going to be dividing that from that point to that point, from here to the all the way to the other side. We're going to be dividing that by 2, and this is going to form our crease line. So whatever I have, I'm going to mark it, and I'll make sure to measure that and then take it all the way down. So we are going to be dividing our measurements using this line to divide our measurements equally. I'll be showing you guys how to do that in a bit. So the next measurement that we'll be looking at is our knee measurement. So for this knee, I'm working with a knee of 23 inches. Remember that you don't need to measure your knee firmly. Just make sure you're able to bend your knee very well. Essentially, the essence of making a good trouser is for you to actually move in it. So I'm dividing my knee measurement by 4. My knee measurement is 23 inches divided by 4 is 5 3/4. So I'm marking 5 3/4 on this side. You can see that it went out of the box, it doesn't matter, and I'm marking it on that side as well. So essentially what we need for that knee measurement is half of our knee measurement. So because we need to distribute it equally, we divided it by 4 and we marked it on each side of it. We're also going to mark that all the way down. So I'll be going in with my straight ruler, and I'm going to be connecting it from that point all the way to my crotch extension, and I'm going to be using a straight line as well to connect it all the way to the hem of this trouser. So remember that if you have any harsh lines, do well to use a curve and smoothen it out. So on the other side, I'll be doing the same thing as well. I'll be using my straight ruler to connect it all the way to my hip line. So for this side, I'll be using my curve just to go in a little bit. Now you can use your ruler for this so that you don't have any excess at this point, but I eventually went in with my ruler later on to use it and smoothing it out better because I didn't like the shape. So but I'll show you how I did it as we go along. So we're essentially done with the front pattern, and before we go, let's do a bit of knee tightening. So on each side of this knee, I decided to go in by quarter on each side, so quarter on this side and quarter on the other side. So I'll now be connecting these points with a straight line. So this afforded me the opportunity to straighten that other side. I said I didn't like how it looked, so do well to make sure that yours appear smooth. So from that quarter inch, I connected it all the way to my crotch line, enabling me remove excess at this point. So I'll be doing this all the way down, and this is what we have as our front pattern. So I'm just going to go in with my eraser to try to erase this line. This eraser really did not serve its purpose at all. Okay, so I'm just showing you the style lines that we'll be cutting through before we move over to our back pattern. So remember, we are doing our back pattern as well on this pattern. So I'll be measuring my crotch extension. Remember, it was 2.5, and I measured it from that point and I marked 2.5 right there. So this will serve as my crotch extension from the back. So remember this 1.5 that we took here, we're going to be doubling it. So from this point we took 1.5, and we're going to be taking from this point, we're going to be taking 3 inches. So we went in by 1.5, and from that 1.5 point we're going in 3 inches. Remember, I did say something about uprise, the center back uprise. So for my size, we'll be using 1.75. so if you're like 49 to 50 hip, you can use 2 inches. So I marked 1.75 all the way up. So from that point I marked 1.75 inches, and I just used a straight line to connect it. So having done that, I'm going to be taking my waist measurement from that uprise. So the way I measured it, I'm sorry my camera cut this off, but I'm going to be showing you eventually before the end of this video. So I'm going to be measuring from that uprise just this way, and I'm tilting it in such a way that it touches my top line, which is the original waistline that I drew earlier. So for my back dart, I used 1.5 inches. So I did my waist measurement divided by 4, and I added 1.5 inches to it. So essentially I got 8 inches, and I added 1.5 inches, making it 9.5. So waist measurement divided by 4 plus your dart allowance. So I marked what I got, which was 9.5. I marked it in such a way that I put my tape on the uprise, and I marked it to touch that top line, and I drew a straight line to meet it. So this will serve the purpose of not allowing your panties to show when you sit down. So do ensure that you take your time to do this. Make sure you touch that waistline that we drew in earlier. So having sorted this out, I'm just going to go to my table to show you again. My thigh measurement is 28.5, and this thigh measurement is what we will be placing on this crotch line. So let's measure what we have here first. So we have about 12 3/4. So that's what we have now. Remember my thigh measurement is 28 inches. So I'm going to be placing that 12 3/4 on that other extended line for my back. So I'm placing it from this point, and I'm going to measure the 28.5 being my full thigh measurement. Remember, the thigh measurement is usually divided by 2. Unlike other measurements, the thigh and knee are divided by 2, unlike the waist and hip that are divided by 4. So I'm going to be adding ease, just a little bit of ease allowance to this. So I'm going to be adding half inch at this point, and I'm just going to extend the line all the way. So from my back waist, I'm going to be connecting it all the way to that half inch allowance, that ease allowance that I added. So I'm going to be using my ruler to connect it all the way like so. If you're doing yours and your lines appear awkward, don't worry, just get through with it. And every hash line, you're going to be using curves to make sure you make it come together. So at this point also, I'll be adding half inch. So on my knee line, I'm going to be adding half inch on both sides. This will serve as my knee measurement for the back. Remember, we tightened our front by removing quarter on each side, and replacing it with half inch on both sides covers the loss and adds a little bit of ease to our knee. So I'm going to connect it all the way to that extension that I made on the crotch line. And remember, I said if you have any hash lines, you can go in with your curve and make sure you smoothen it out. You want to make sure your pattern appears as smooth as possible. So the half inch that I added on the knee, I'll also be adding it on the hem of these pants, and I'm going to be connecting everything together. So watch me carefully, guys. Please don't be shy to play this video as many times as needed to make sure you get it. This is really easy, but you just have to follow my steps. So I added the same half inch on this side, and I added it on that side too. So I'm going to use my straight ruler and connect it all the way. Remember, this is the back pattern that we're doing. So I'm connecting it to that other 2.5 inches that I marked for the crotch extension of the back. So connecting everything together, making sure it's looking okay. So remember, I said every hash line you're going to do it smoothing it out. So I'm just trying to let you know what the back and front patterns look like. That's the front, and that's the back. So watch me label accordingly. That's the front, the back, and so on and so forth. I'm doing this so that it does not confuse you. I try to use a black marker to do this so that I will the back looks thicker than the front, so you may as well pay attention to the thicker part, and that will form your back. Then for the hip measurement, remember we already put our hip measurement for the front, and we did remove 1 inch from it. So we're going to be dividing our entire hip by 2, and I got 22.5. So I'm going to be measuring from that curve right here, and not from this line. No, I'm going to be measuring from that curve, from that point, and let's know what we have for the front. So we have about 10.25 inches for our front hip. Remember that half of our hip is 22 inches, so we need to fill in whatever is left of the 22.5 inches with the back pattern. So from this side right here, and let me extend it so it doesn't confuse us, we've already we already have our side seam for the back, so we're going to be doing our measurements from that side. So remember, let me just go over it one more time. I measured from here and I got 10.25 inches. So from this side seam right here, I placed that 10.25 inch right there. So I placed it on that point. Please pay attention, and I'm going to measure the what is left of my hip measurement, the 22.5, and it fell right there. Yours may be outside the box, yours may be way inside. It doesn't matter, just follow the measurement that you have. So the next step is to measure from my crotch line all the way to my knee for the front pattern. So from this point right here, I'm going to place my tape and measure what I have all the way to my knee. So I got about 11 11.5 inches. So I placed that 11.5 inches on this mark right here, and it was short of about ½ inch. So and this is where I'll be marking my curve to. So essentially you can step down from your crotch line, you can step down ½ inch to get the crotch depth for your back. So this is very essential, because if you don't do this, this is why your trousers have excess and it doesn't really move freely. So from that point, I'm going to be connecting it all the way up. So I'm going to use my curve to make sure it's running smoothly, and like I said, I used a black marker to highlight the back so that it's more obvious. So watch how I connected it, and I'm going to draw a straight line all the way to that curve right there. So from my uprise, I'll be drawing a straight line to meet that back crotch curve that I just drew in. So this is what my back looks like so far, and we are almost done with this. So it ran all the way. You can see that this is looking so fine, and this, trust me, this will fit you perfectly. So I'm just highlighting the back so that it's more obvious than the front. So now you can see the back clearly, and you can see the way I drew the waistline to meet that top line. So I'm just trying to determine what I have as my waist measurement for the front. Remember, I did not add any dart allowance for the front at all. I'll only be adding that allowance to the back. So for the back waistline, I added 1.5 inches of that, and this is what I'll be taking out later on as we go along. So I'm just trying to tell you that I divided my waist measurement by 4, and I added 1.5 inches to it. So to know exactly where to place our darts, I divided that waist by 2, and I found the midpoint. So following the angle of this line, I am going to be drawing in my dart like so. So I measured 4.5 inches down, and I drew a line which will serve as my middle dart leg, and I'll be sharing the 1.5 inches on both sides, which means that I'll be marking 3/4 inch on one side and the other 3/4 on the other side as well, and I'll be drawing in my dart like so. So the dart is not straight. If you've noticed, it followed that angle right there, and that's how you want to be drawing yours when you are drafting this pattern. So I'm just going into cross check and make sure that everything is all prim and proper, and please just follow my pencil so that I can show you the back pattern. So that's the back pattern all the way down to the hem, all the way like so and so on. So we'll be tracing this out on another pattern, and then we'll be cutting out the front and back patterns separately. So I'm just going to be showing you a sneak peek of what this looks like when I'm done. Guys, don't forget to watch the video when it's done. You can see that there are no excesses anywhere. It fits like a glove, and I'll be sharing the sewing video very soon, so do well to watch out for it. I love you for watching. See you in my next tutorial. Bye.